Recording. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in for the R&P learning section. Today's session is on strategies for retail fundraising, as you would have seen. Uh, and Dhaval from Danamojo has very generously sort of offered to host this session. For those of you who don't know, Dhaval is the CEO and founder of Danamojo. Danamojo itself is a payment solution platform for NGOs. Dhaval has over 15 years of experience in the social sector, out of which he was the CEO of Give India for 4 years. And during his tenure, the donations to the platform sort of increased from 7 crores to 42 crores through more than 150,000 donors. Dhaval has a deep understanding of the retail space, and no better than him to sort of share insights from his experience to sort of take us through this session. Danamojo does have a program for organizations who are interested in building that retail giving muscle. And Dhaval will also, towards the later half of the session, talk about that program. So thank you for joining in. Over to you, Dhaval. Take it from here.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Abhishek. And thanks to India Philanthropies for giving me this opportunity to be here and to speak to everyone else. I don't know about deep insights, but I think it's all a work in progress, as I am also learning every single day from a lot of organizations who are doing great work in this space. And more importantly, trying to understand retail behavior as it changes. I will definitely say I have a huge amount of curiosity in this space to learn and to help people who are interested in retail fundraising. So I'm going to start off. So we're going to do this session in 2 pieces. In the first piece, we're going to talk about individual fundraising. We're going to talk about the power of, what individual fundraising, why you should do it, and then focus a bit on retail. I think, yeah. So, so that's what I am going to aim to do. And in the second part, we're going to talk about a program that Danamojo is launching called Dana Vriddhi to help organizations that want to work on retail fundraising, specifically want to build the retail fundraising engines, retail fundraising teams within their organization, and how they can go about doing it. So I'm just going to share my screen out here to move things forward. Okay, if I can just get a confirmation that this is visible. Yeah, I think it is. Okay. So let's start off, and to begin with, we'll just focus. We will talk first about to say what are the different categories of donors, channels of donors. As everyone probably knows this, we have 4 broad buckets of donors. You have government, you have institution or foundations, you have corporates and CSR, and you have individuals. I like breaking up individuals further into 2 segments. One is retail and one is HNI. The question that I'm often asked is, what is retail? What is HNI? And my simple answer for people is to say HNI is anyone who gives more than 1 lakh rupees per annum. But my slightly more involved answer is a person who you are willing to meet and spend time at least once a year, if not twice, to take them through the program that they've supported, to give them an update, and to do it all in person. And I'm putting a dollar value or a rupee value to that, to say that what is that number? What is that number that you should aspire, and what is that number that makes sense for you? Because for smaller organizations, maybe 1 lakh or even 50,000 could be relevant, and for larger organizations, it could be as much as 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. So I think that's a more involved way of defining an HNI, and I'd leave it up to each one of you to do it as you see fit. I just want to add out here that please feel free to ask questions if you'd want to, and to at any point of time on chat. We will do the Q&A after this round for 10 minutes in an oral fashion. But in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them on chat. So I'm going to ask all of you, I'm going to launch a poll out here to understand from each one of you, what are your different sources of funding, right? And feel free to select multiple options. I think you should be able to see a poll. Yeah, okay, great. I can see some responses coming in as well. Fantastic. So please fill it out. Let's give this about fully 20, 25 seconds, and I think everyone should have their answers in. Okay, so I just give another 5 seconds. I think everyone more or less has responded out here. Okay, so let me share these results with you for all of you to see and see that, you know, as pretty much expected, 75% have funding from institutions and foundations. And a lot of y'all, and it's pretty interesting that the rest of y'all, a lot of y'all have funding from corporate CSR, from individual HNIs and individual retail is pretty much in the same bracket of 40 to 50%. So this is actually very encouraging because I can see that more of y'all have funding from retail than y'all have funding from HNIs. And this is, I must say, a first time I have seen in any group that I have addressed, where there are more organizations with funding from retail donors compared to HNI. So this is fantastic. I think we'll have a very lively discussion and interesting questions as we go forward in this. So it's great to see that all of you already believe in this. And so half my job is done. And I think my job is now to make you do something about this and to kind of increase your funding out here, right? So let's move forward. So in the US, about 76% of all donations is by individual donors. I'd like you to, if you know, can you tell me what the number for India is? And you can put that in the chat box. If you don't know, guess your best guess estimate, best guesstimate. So Farkhanda says 3%. Okay, very interesting. Hope to see some more responses, guys. I hope everyone's wide and awake. In fact, I would love to see you guys. It energizes me. So if you all can switch on your cameras as well, that would be really great. But yeah, 5%, 8, 10%. Okay, seems to be that we are in this 10% range. We've had 28%. Yeah, who said 28? Yeah, Ravita is saying 28. I wonder how the 28 number came. I mean, 30 I understand, 25 I do, but 28, interesting. 10%. So everyone is seeming to be in this 10% range. 1.5%. Oh, very interesting. Vaishali says more than 35%. Okay. So I'll say, Vaishali, you are probably the closest to the actual answer, but you are yet halfway into just half the answer, right? So in 2021, 70%, more than 70% of all donations, if I consider only individuals and corporates, were from individuals. And this is not based on any survey. This is not based on any, anecdotal evidence. This is based on the tax deductions that have been claimed by individuals and corporates. And because it is based on this, I will say that this number also is significantly underrepresented, underestimated, right? And let's talk about why that is the case.
Hi, just a quick question. How much is there a way to split the number for religious giving from the rest of it, from everything else?
Right.
I guess that's
I'm not sure who's speaking, but yeah, so I'll answer this question, but I would request that you can put down the questions on chat and
Sure.
I can respond to it as well. But religious giving is not tax exempt fundamentally. So none of this data has religious giving into it. Okay, this is based on tax deductions which are claimed. So religious giving is separate from this. And that's a good point that you've made, because in case of the US, religious giving is included in that 76%. Right? So even when organization, and there are some organizations which are religious organizations, which also take charitable money, because they fund charitable causes, they fund religion agnostic kind of causes and religion agnostic activities, that will be included, but any religious activities are not included in this. And the reason I said that giving is underestimated in this data is for the following reasons. First of all, individual donations, the tax benefit that you can claim is capped at 10% of one's total income. So if you are giving more than 10% of your income, it's not counted in this. And a lot of HNIs especially do give more than 10% of their income. So that number again is not something that is accounted for out here. Many HNIs give via shares, wills, bequests. Again, that is not captured in this data. And last and foremost, many donors now will opt for the new tax regime. And when they opt for the new tax regime, again, they will not get this tax benefit. And this effect we will see more in future years, because this is from this year onwards that the new tax regime has become default. So we will not get this data. The donations may yet be happening, but tax deduction claiming will not happen. So we may not get this data. But even with all of this, it's a number which is higher than corporate in 2021. And this number has been higher than corporates in the past. It's much more last year, and that is because of COVID. So I will give you a little bit of a spread of how this has happened over the years. So as you can see, in 2019-20, the number for individual giving was 38% and corporate was 62% because of COVID. So a lot of COVID-19 giving happened in 19-20. And as a result of that, corporate giving as a share was much higher. That has dropped off, and it has dropped off in real terms also. So if in 1920, corporate giving was at 25,000 crores, in 2021, it has come down to 8,000 crores. So it's got averaged between these 2 years. We had higher in 1 year and it has become lower in the next year. But even otherwise, if you see the growth of individual giving, it has been in the roughly in the 40 to 50% range. But in my belief, it has been much higher than 50% for all the reasons I stated earlier. So as an estimate, it has always been lower, right? Individual giving is always underestimated in these numbers. Right? But if you look at individual giving over the last 5 years in absolute terms, we've seen that it has increased from 6,300 crores in 16-17 to about 20,000 crores in 2021, right? That's that's like a 3 times increase over these 5 years. And if you see the numbers, it has consistently increased, right? While if you look at corporate numbers, after the huge growth, it has fallen. Obviously, we will see that 21-22 will be higher, but it will not be anywhere close to what the 19-20 number was. It'll probably be an average of the growth from 18-19. So corporate giving will grow at what I will call the typical rate of growth of Indian business. But individual giving is growing much faster. So I think Priya is asking me what data on what individuals give for. Unfortunately, we don't have this data from the budget documents from where all of this is sourced. But I think that pretty much one can, if you put a guess on what that giving is from my previous experience, I'll say the top 4 causes are children, education, health, and disability. Health and elderly. Elderly and disability kind of play around. But yeah, if you take 5 causes, then these are the top 5 causes. But we must also understand that the number of NGOs in each of these causes also is much higher than in unique and niche cause areas. So I really don't think it matters where people give. I think it matters what people give to, or rather what stories people give towards, right? Sorry, Farkanda, we don't have much more recent data because that's not yet published by the government authorities. This is the data that has been published in the most recent budget, which is so we get delayed data by 1 year, typically, for the file. And if you look at the data, the other interesting thing is in the last 4 out of 5 years, we have seen individual in 3 or 5 years, we have seen individual giving also growing. We've seen that the growth rate of individual giving is much higher than the growth rate of corporate giving, right? So in an overall trajectory, we will see that growth will keep increasing for individual giving. I have a question at this point, and feel free to answer in the chat, is to basically understand from you that what all problems have you had with institutional giving, with CSR? And feel free to put them in the chat window while we move through the next few slides. So the reason that I talk about individuals so much is a source of data, is a reason of diversification, right? The reason being that while it's important to have all kinds of funding, it's equally important to have individual. And without individual, your sources are not really diversified. Having government, institutional, foundation, it is like owning stocks of IT. It's of 3 stocks of IT, which are tech, whatever, Infosys, TCS, and Wipro. There is no diversification if you do that, right? You need to hold stocks in another sector to have diversification. And similarly out here, you need to have individual donors to have real diversification. And I'll try to explain it through various parameters out here. So one is, how do you reach these individual donors? And to understand that, let us understand why they give. So why does government give? It's obviously to solve a problem. Institution, foundations also are looking at solving a problem. Corporate CSR is doing it because it's the law, primarily. There's social responsibility, there's brand building. And for some of them, there's a concept of giving back. Individuals, on the other hand, are clearly giving back. There's a personal reason. There's a duty to give. And for a lot of people, this could also simply be a guilt conscience. If I give money, then all my sins are washed away, kind of thing. But there are various reasons why people give, none of which are similar to the other segments. How do they give? How do they decide where to give? Right? So for government, it has to be that the work that you are doing matches a scheme or a policy of the government. And then they will give you money from that scheme or policy. For institutional and foundation, it has to be about solving the same problem. You should be solving the same problem as them. For corporate and CSR, it's about, you will get money if you have a connect with the CEO or the CXO, or with large corporates if it falls within one of their focus areas. But getting a foot in the door through a connection is actually very important with CSR. With HNIs, on the other hand, and with individuals, trust and connect plays a role, right? They need to trust you. They need to trust the organization. They need to trust the founder. And they have to have some connect. In most cases, it is somebody else who has referred them to you. It is somebody else who may be donating to you, who's given, who's talked well about you to these people. And that's why they will give. Further, with some large HNIs, even focus areas are important. They have to be working in those areas. Otherwise, they are not going to be interested. But trust and connect play a very, very important role in this. Without that, they're not going to give to you. Moving forward, how do you reach them, or how can you reach them? So because the first 2 segments of government and of institutional foundation are solving a problem, and it has to just match with what they're doing, you can actually even reach out cold to them. Because as long as you are working in the same area that they are interested in, and they're happy to work with you. On the other hand, with corporate CSR and individual HNI, like I said, connect is important. So it has to be via referral. Right? It has to be via someone they know that they will come to you. And individual retail, again, individual retail is everybody, right? All of us are individual retail donors, if not HNI. And that can essentially be our own friends and family, right? So as a result of that, I think the most important thing that I would take away from this is individual donors are all around us. Many times we say that we don't know a CEO, or we don't know somebody influential, we don't know HNIs, and that's why we can't get them. And I would say for you, the retail model is the perfect prescription to that. It's because you will know people around you. Each of us knows at least 500 friends on LinkedIn and Facebook. There's more than 1,000 contacts in our address book. Now it's a question of, are we willing to ask? Are we ready to ask? Right? That is what it is. Let's move on to some more parameters out here. So moving on to some other parameters. What's the speed of decision making and what affects the speed of decision making? So we need to understand, how do they decide? They decide, government decides, obviously some officers, some committees there. Institution foundations are obviously driven by committee. CSR by mandate has to have a corporates have to have a CSR committee. But individuals decide on their own. They decide with their spouses. They decide with their families. So as a result of it, from a speed of decision making, they will be the fastest, right? Also because they are giving their own money. Apart from individual, no one else is giving their own money. Individual is the only segment which is giving their own money. So because they are giving their own money, because they are the decision maker, the speed of making a decision is the fastest with them. So for how long do they give? How much do they give? Let us look at the process. For the first two segments, it's a much more rational process. First three segments, it's a much more rational process. Individuals, it's a combination of emotion. And for HNIs, there's a rational element because they are giving large sums of money. So the decision to give is very emotional. The reason to give is very emotional. Where to give becomes rational. But with retail, it's a much more impulsive decision-making process. I like something, I see something, I'm giving money. It's a small amount of money, so I don't mind giving quickly. What is the time period for which people would give money? I think this is something that all of you all would have faced, all of you all would have recognized. Government gives money for a year. Typically, institution foundations can give for a much more longer period of time, say 5 to 7 years. Corporate and CSR typically gives money for about 3 to 5 years, could give for 5 years also, but it always comes with an annual renewal. And as all of you all well know, when you have something like COVID, all rules go for a toss. If I have a bad year, if I have poor profits, all my funding can get cut. And even if I have higher profits, maybe there's another NGO that the organization may decide to fund. So every year, your contract really is up for renewal, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get money next year, even though you have a 3 to 5 year renewal, agreement. Individuals, on the other hand, can be lifetime givers. If they like an organization, there is no reason for them to stop giving to that organization. They can keep giving year on year to that organization. Not only they, but even their children may land up giving to you. Many times as children go abroad today, they tend to give to organizations that their parents are supporting back in India. Right? They don't have any idea what's happening in India. They don't know which are good organizations. They tend to follow whatever their parents tell them. So this leads to not just one generation giving, but you have a multi-generational effect of people giving money. And what is the amount? So obviously it's much higher with institutions, foundations, government, kind of mid-level CSR and HNI is kind of similar. Retail is much lower, but you make up with volumes. You make up with how many people are giving, with the number of people giving. So all in all, the point that I'd like to make out here is that we have a lot of similarity in giving between government, institutional, and corporates, but it's very different when it comes to individual HNIs, individual retail. It's a very, very different segment of donors. And that's why it's important to have this segment without leaving the others. I'm not saying we should not do the others. I think we have to do the others, but we also have to diversify into individual. And it's great that I can see that close to 50% of organizations on this call are already doing retail. Right? I think 40% are already doing HNI. That's absolutely fantastic. So I had a question and wanted to understand now, what is the share of retail that you are doing? I'm just going to have another poll. Yeah. So I'd like to understand for all the organizations which are doing individual giving, what is your share of individual giving in your overall donations, which is the first question. And the second question is, what is your share of online donations in your total donations? Do you do online donations at all? I'll give about a minute for you to look at these questions, read through the options, and respond to them.
Dhaval, some folks are asking about how do you define online donations? Maybe you can just speak to that.
Okay, yeah. So online donations or whatever donations happen via credit card, debit card. Yes, crowdfunding falls in online as well. Digital wallets, not bank transfers. Bank transfers or checks are not online donations. Obviously, cash is not online. But anything that happens, let's say via your website or via some other websites, where people will make donations via credit card, debit cards, and so on. Those could also be crowdfunding websites, Risha. Okay, we'll just, I think more or less everyone's responded, and we'll give about 5 seconds for anyone else who wants to do that. Okay, so I'm going to end this poll and I'm going to share the results. I think you can see it. So to the first question of the share of individual donations, interesting to see that about 25% of organizations are in the 5 to 10% range, but another 25% are in the 10 to 25% range. So that's great. I think you all have made that beginning of that journey and fantastic to the one organization in the 25 to 50. Oh, we have 3 organizations which have 75 to 100% individual donations. That is very interesting. I mean, that's absolutely hats off. And they are getting all their donations via online. So out of the share of online donations also is 75 to 100%. That is very interesting. Would love to know which organizations these are. But I think a lot of organizations have not tapped into online, which means that most of your individual donations are coming in from HNIs. Just a few organizations, much lower number of organizations getting donations above 10% from online sources. So I think this is the second part we will go to, but I think it's an encouraging start to see at least more than 50% of organizations who started down the retail path, which was pretty clear in our first slide as well. Okay, thank you. So why is it important to ask funds from individuals? We've seen that there is money. We've seen that it's a great source of diversification. What are the other reasons that one should be looking at? So yeah, diversification is one thing that we spoke about. The second we did speak about somewhat was stability. Retail donors are more stable in their giving. Like I said, that if somebody likes you, they will keep giving to you. And even if you lose donors, so unlike in a corporate, you may have 5 corporate donors. You lose one donor, it's really tough to replace that donor with another corporate donor in a short period of time. I'm sure a lot of you all have experienced when a donor goes away, the entire struggle of replacing that funding, right? But with retail donors, even if you lose 20% of your donors, it's a lot easier to replace them because retail donors are all around you. Retail donors, everybody. And it really requires us to reach out to everybody to be able to raise those donations back again. So it's a much easier way of replenishing your donations. The second is unlimited, right? I think CSR today is now limited at 2% of profits. Foundations have budgets, governments have budgets, but with the level of giving that is there, whether retail, whether HNI, the level of giving is very low today within individuals, and it doesn't take them much to increase their giving from about 1% to 2% of their income. Most givers are probably donating today about 0.1 to 0.2% of their income, right? Even if they make that 10 times, it's a huge difference for you, and it makes no difference to their lifestyles. So that is an opportunity which is there, that if they like what you're doing, if you are able to engage them well, then they can give a lot more. And they can also give for a much longer period of time, like we discussed, not just their generation, but across generations as well. Okay. The fourth thing is fundraise. Unlike any other segment, donors, individual donors can fundraise for you. We've seen that work very well through all the marathons that are happening in the country where people are raising money for causes. We've seen that through referrals that people make to each other, to their peers, their networks, something which you will never find in any other donor segment as itself. And the last and most important to me is an engagement. I think all of us, all of you are there today to drive some change in society. Some of that is also about driving mindset change amongst society itself. And if you can get society to be part of your mission, to be part of your organization, to help you in that, I think it can create a lot more of an impact. We have seen organizations actually going back to individuals, not just for money, but for other forms of support which have helped them significantly well. Right. So I think that is, to me, is the most interesting thing. I think we have a very interesting comment here from Joe. She mentioned that they were relying 100% on individual in their earlier days, saw it growth mature, and as soon as they went to grants and CSR, they've kind of gone back and now they're looking to return to the roots. And Joe, we would love to hear from you why you are looking to do this. I think that would be great to hear from you. If you're there, can you please tell us why are you looking to go back to individual donations? Okay, maybe we'll catch her later. So we've seen that there's a lot of money. Individual donors are giving lots. You need to diversify. There are other benefits of individual donations. And to further give evidence of the fact that individual donors want to give, sharing some surveys with you now, where we can, and even though while these are some dated surveys, now more than 10 years old, but I think this trend persists. This information is yet valid today, wherein more people in India are interested in doing and buying from socially consider, and this is a list of developing countries, right? You consider this list, India is at the top of this list. So moving ahead. And obviously there have been various reports which have talked about this. You're well aware of the World Charity Giving report by CAP. They've looked at it and they found that Indians are more interested in giving compared to the US and UK. And I think so that's also very positive for us. They add that 84% of adults in India have given at least once a year. Though the giving is slightly more broad-based, it includes volunteering, it includes giving in kind, it includes money. But yes, 84% have given in one of these 5 forms. And the India Philanthropy Report has also mentioned that individual donations have increased 21% year on year over the last 5 years. So across reports, across information that we have, we've seen that individual giving has increased. However, what we have also seen is that organizations have looked at individual giving only when other sources of funding have dried up. And we've seen a very, very great example of that during COVID. I'll also add this, that while a lot of organizations asked during COVID and received, the organizations that continued engaging with those donors, the organizations that continued working with those donors, asking those donors for their work after that, have witnessed that they have kept getting that money year on year as well. They've not lost the money just because COVID giving has gone away, right? So, yeah. So just to give a quick brief into the compliance requirements, I think one of the questions we often get asked a lot is, what are the compliance requirements for NGOs and for donors, individual donors specifically, and it's seeming to be very different from other segments of donors, which is not the case. There is no difference in compliance even between Indian and foreign donors. It's the same requirement that is there. And the other big myth is that you only need to collect this donor if you want a tax receipt, which is not true. You absolutely need to collect name, address, and nationality of every donor. Even if you do not have FCRA, you must collect the nationality to know that the donor is an Indian donor. Otherwise, how do you know that he's not a foreign donor, right? So it's important to collect. With FCRA, you absolutely need to know which nationality You need to know if he's an American, he's a British citizen, he's a Hong Kong citizen, whatever. You need to know that nationality. You can't just say foreign donor. You need the nationality for your tax filing, as you well know. And PAN number is only required if the donor wants a tax benefit, or you want to provide the donor with a tax benefit, or the amount that the donor is donating is more than 50,000. So this is all there is with respect to compliance with respect to individual donors. In fact, there is, further thing, even if you don't collect this information or you are unable to get this information sometimes, you can classify the donation as anonymous. And the law allows us to collect anonymous donations up to a certain limit. That limit is 1 lakh rupees or 5% of their total income, whichever is higher. So if your total income, for example, is 1 crore, you can collect up to 5 lakhs in anonymous donations. And if you collect above that also, you can pay tax on the amount which is collected above that. So there's nothing wrong in this. You can do it. Right? Because this is allowed by law. This is not my preference. So coming back to retail giving, we talked about retail giving and we said that it is, growing really fast. It's doing really well. So we saw COVID-19 lead to lockdowns. And we saw individual giving increase, specifically online, because we had social distancing, right? So we saw all of that happening. We saw that growth in donations by credit cards, debit cards actually increased. And there's, again, a lot of reports which came in on that front, right? From 28% to 44% increase by digital wallets, from 33 to 40% increase by credit cards. But broadly, the idea is because of COVID, a lot of organizations took payment gateways. Because of COVID, a lot of organizations started asking donors to donate online because no one could come and give money. Because of COVID, a lot of donors also started doing. Just like because of COVID, we all started using Zoom a little more, right? And that's what we're doing even today. So I think COVID has very fundamentally changed behavior of people. So that's why the question that I asked on how many of you all raise online donations, because I think if you do not have online, it's important to get started. I mean, you're already late to the game, but certainly you should get started on online donations because that is what your donors have already migrated. Joe is asking, can you share the source for the law? I'm assuming you mean the anonymous donation law. So Joe, that is section 115 BBC of the Income Tax Act, which allows anonymous donations. Section 115 of the Income Tax Act. So let me mention this to you now. I'd like to ask you a question, and I will actually run a poll on this. Why do you not do retail fundraising? I'd love to hear why you do not do retail fundraising. What are the challenges that you have? What are the issues that you have? And if you think I've not covered something out here, please put it into chat. Okay, so I think we've got a lot of our answers in, but only 50%. Okay, guys, let's take 10 seconds. Simple question. Would love to get more answers. We have 45 people on the call, but only 20 odd responses. So whoever has not responded, please do. Okay. Right, last 5 seconds. So sharing these results, I think fairly interesting. I think most people have said they don't know how to raise money. And I think that's great, right, Abhishek, because it works for our program. And that's what we are going to try and address in our program, is help you understand how to raise money from retail. But we'll talk more about that later. As expected, a lot of you all have thought about this and have thought that it's high cost, high effort, low ROI. And I think that's generally been because of two reasons, and we'll address that, because that's also something that we wanted to break the myth around why people think of it as high cost, high effort. Right? I think one of the reasons, in my opinion, that people think of it as high cost, high effort, is because a lot of organizations think that the kind of reporting, the kind of feedbacks, the kind of updates, the kind of support that is required to be given to any other donor, typically a CSR donor or an institution, foundation donor, I have to give the same kind of updates, feedback, and support to a retail donor. So let me first of all break the myth that that is not the case. The retail donor is not looking for it. The retail donor is making a donation for you, is expecting, one, a very prompt response that you have received the money, a promptly sent thank you note, a promptly sent ATG receipt are the hygiene factors that this donor is expecting in a very short time. And after that, he's expecting that at some point of time, maybe over the next 3 months, 6 months, you are able to share a report, which is a broad report of the update of your program, a report on how your money has helped, a report on what you have done with his money, not specifically, but in a pool. It could be towards a project. It could be about building a classroom. It could be about building a well. It could be about educating a certain class. Even a broad-based update, not very specific, because obviously you can't give a specific update to somebody who's given you 5,000 rupees. I mean, if you can, great. There are organizations which do that. But that's not what the donor is expecting. The donor is expecting that you give some update to him about your organization, the project that you've done, how his money is spent, and some combination of that. And the beauty is you can give the same update to all donors who've given this report. Second is service, right? Support and service. If you're worried that you have to spend a lot of effort on this, that is not the case. Back at Give India, we had 150,000 donors, and we had one customer support person who used to spend half their time on this activity. Just half a person's time for 150,000 donors. So this is not something that will take away a lot of your time. You can depute somebody to do it, and I'm sure they won't have more than a few hours of work in a day at most. So it is not something that is going to take away a lot of your time, because you have to think about it differently. It's a very different segment. It does not have the same expectations as other segment of donor. And that's another reason why this diversity is important, right? And I think not having donors to ask is something which I think we have to all change our mindset, that everyone around us, everyone we know, everyone our organization comes into contact with is also a potential donor. I know of organizations that have asked their bank relationship managers for money. I know of organizations that have asked their vendors, the grocer from where they get their, the resources, the meal items, for money. So I think we have to change our mindset that people are all around us and we have to be able to ask everyone for money. I think it's more of a mindset thing. So we've talked about low returns. I don't think it's low returns. I think it's the way in which we do it that sometimes makes us think of low returns. But I think we want to, through our program, kind of change this myth about cost, effort, and returns. It's small amounts of money for sure, but it is from a large number of people that you can get these donations, right? And the last thing I'd like to address out here is, I hear a lot of people wanting to do retail because it is unrestricted funding. And I think that if we, and I know people, the meaning of unrestricted funding is not unrestricted. It's not to say I'll use the money whichever way I want. It's really to say flexible funding. It's really to mean that I will use the money in the project that is required. It really is to say that I will use the money when I might have a cash flow crisis because of money that was supposed to come in from CSR didn't come in. And I think that terminology is very important, because when we say unrestricted and you tell a donor that I like you because you give me money whichever way I want to use, I don't think any donor is going to give money. CSR, whether it is CSR or whether it is individual, that particular trait does not change with people. And I think if you also go out and if you are giving money, I'm sure you wouldn't like to give money because for the same reason. I think it's very important for us to recognize that even this segment of donors requires to have their money spent in the right way. They're happy for it to be spent in any way. So if you've taken money for a particular cause and now you need to put that into another cause, please reach back to the donor, explain to them, tell them, and 99% of the times they will agree with you. I have experienced that back at Give India. We used to often have situations where we required to rechannel donors' money, and we would ask them and pretty much, and we would give them the option. You can say no, and you can say refund the money back to me, or you can tell us which cause you want to put it to. Nobody ever asked us to refund the money, and practically 99% was okay with whichever cause we put that money back into. So I think that in that sense, donors are very flexible, and we should use that flexibility, but I don't think we should not misuse that flexibility. So let me move forward and talk about the different stages that one could think about retail fundraising as. And I will break it down into 3 phases, which is the start, grow, and scale phase. Guys, if you all have any questions, any comments, any thoughts, please feel free to put in the chat. We should discuss if there's anything you don't agree with, and we should certainly talk that out. And I think it would be very useful for the learning of this entire group as well. So we've kind of developed this framework wherein we say there are 3 phases of retail fundraising, and what are the different things or channels that you would use in these 3 phases, which is the start, grow, and scale phase. So the start phase is one where we talk about online donations. So this is a phase wherein you put up something on your website, you put up a payment gateway on your website, and you could raise money. You do email marketing. You reach out to your donors over email. You can reach out to them over basic WhatsApp if you have a group of WhatsApp donors. Or you can also do crowdfunding. These are low-cost activities, have minimal cost impact. At a grow phase, you can invest in WhatsApp marketing, which is using more sophisticated tools to reach your donors over WhatsApp. You could even do social media marketing, invest in advertising to reach out to newer donors on social media. And you could think about doing events for new donors, for existing donors, to engage with them. And then finally, what is generally considered in how organizations scale retail giving are the really high-cost activities, which are direct mail, telecalling, face-to-face. And as you've probably understood that we've kind of mapped it also from the perspective of how much investment do you need to make versus, what activity you're going to do. And that also increases as we go from left to right. But I would also like to bust this thing that scale only comes by direct mail, telecalling, or face-to-face. And we look at some models that can be used based on the kind of organization you are to scale without direct mail, to scale without telecalling, to scale without these high-cost kind of measures. So one of the organizations that was with that came on board Danamojo about 6 years ago used to collect 18 lakhs in donations every year online through their online platform. Over the last 6 years, this 18 lakhs has now increased to 1.1 crores. Right? It has gone 6 times in 6 years on the Danamojo platform. And why has that happened is because they have, not because we have helped them raise more money, but we've given them the feeling, the security, the comfort that this is a stable platform, this is a reliable platform, this is a compliant platform, and they can raise money on it. And as a result of it, they have gone out and they have done much more to raise money. As you can see, 2021 was the first COVID year from a calendar year perspective, and they double their donations. But beyond that, also over the next 3 years, they've managed to retain approximately the same level of donations. So this is very encouraging that an organization, as an example that I had given you earlier, an organization that has actually raised more money during COVID has managed to maintain that higher level and has not fallen below it just because COVID has got over. So they have engaged very well with their donors through this mechanism. So I talked about saying, about scaling retail fundraising. And we talked about those 3 mechanisms that are there, which is direct mail, telecalling, face-to-face. But there are other ways in which you can do this. And we've developed 6 models which organizations could adopt. Some of them are relevant to all organizations, and some of them are relevant to some organizations. So one model is using employees, right? Using your own employees to fundraise via their social networks. The second model is more valid for organizations which have many volunteers or which are a volunteer-driven model, wherein volunteers raise money for the organizations. The third model is again relevant, I think, to many of y'all, at least to 50% of y'all, who raise money via corporate donors, right? Who raise CSR money. Can you get corporate volunteers who come to your organization or make them come to your organizations? Can you make them ambassadors of your organizations? Can you make them donors to your organization? And over a period of time, can you make them fundraisers for your organization as well? Many organizations have people today, both corporate and otherwise, raising money for them through marathons, raising money from them through various other mechanisms. There's an organization called Umeed, which does a 55-kilometer walk every year, and everyone who does that walk raises money for the organization. Another interesting model, which again many of y'all can use, is raising money via alumni and beneficiaries. I mean, have you all ever thought of it? Are you doing it? Would be an interesting thing. And direct donors. Can you, a third model is wherein you actually providing a benefit to the donor. I'll explain more about this as we go through each of these, in a little bit more detail. So your employees, right? Can you get them to crowdfund for you, crowdfund for your organization in their individual capacities? And that has obviously a lot of benefits, right? Your donors know you your employees know you the best. They are your brand ambassadors. And can you make it a fun activity? Can you make it an employee engagement activity that they could do, right? I think it also allows other team members to understand how difficult fundraising is. And most of all, what you always aspire for in terms of new donors, you will get that as well. And there are these couple of organizations which have done this, right? They've aspired to raise money from using employees, getting employees to fundraise, and it has allowed them to come together much closer. I mean, one of the things we've talked to them and heard from them is while it is difficult, it is challenging, but at the end of the day, it's very motivating. At the end of the day, the entire organization comes closer together because it's the one activity that every member of the organization does, right, in the year. So that helps them to kind of come together, and it helps them not just raise more money, raise new funds. And this is something every organization can do across the board, right? The second is via volunteers, more suited for organizations that have volunteers. We've seen organizations, MAD, UNI, Bhumi, all of these organizations have volunteers, and their volunteers, donate money and raise money, right? So that is something that you could also do. Even if you have few volunteers, sometimes volunteers may not be able to donate to you, but they want to do more. What else can you make them do? Can you get them to, raise money for you? Because they also know you better as an organization, right? And you could do this as an annual event. You could do it, create a competitive spirit. A lot of these organizations, which you see on the screen now, they have a very fun event, fun competitive way of doing it. They kind of honor people who raise the most money by state, by city. It becomes a nice, fun, competitive, and yet competitive activity. Obviously works best if you as an organization either have a volunteer model or have volunteers, right? You don't need a volunteer model, but you need volunteers to do this. This model works best if you have CSR funding, You can organize corporate donor days. You can organize events where corporates can come into your organization. You can give them a tour and then ask them for money. Make it fun, make them do something, make them your ambassadors when they go back to their organizations. Again, some organizations out here which have done this, have started down the journey, have been doing it for a while. I think many, if you've not experienced, Akshay Patra has this tour for everybody, not just corporates, at 3:30 in the morning to see their kitchens. I think anyone who goes on that tour is completely impressed and is very likely to give money, right? So this is something that is important to do. You can come back, do a debriefing session at the end of the tour, and obviously make a pitch for a donation. So this is again, obviously, I think applicable to organizations with corporate donors. So champion fundraisers are people who've been long-time supporters of your organization. They could be volunteers, they could be board members, they could be past employees, they could be people who just love your organization, and they are looking to do much more. They are looking to give more than money. They're looking to give their time. They're looking to give their expertise, and they have the networks to raise money from. So we see a lot of this happening during the Bombay Marathon very specifically, but also during other events, wherein these kind of fundraisers look towards raising money for NGOs. So this is something that we would, again, something that you could curtail and get these people to raise more money. I gave you the example of the Bombay Marathon as well as Ummeed as the organization that organizes the long 55-kilometer walk. Okay. Typically works better if you have supporters with senior management. If you don't have and you have CSR funding, I will urge you to build this. I will urge you to reach out to senior management as such and ask them to also give to you in their individual capacity. Ask them to mentor you. Ask them to work with you. If they are engaged with you, all of this will happen over a period of time. Just find a way to get them engaged in whichever manner they are willing to do. The rest will follow through. Another very, very interesting model is raising money from alumni and beneficiaries. Right? Sorry, I think, oops. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's very, very critical to use alumni and beneficiary also to raise money. I think I've got this bullet points copied from the previous one, sorry. But I'd like to give an example of Foundation for Excellence, which over a 10-year period has increased the money that has raised from alumni by close to 20 times. While donors have grown 8 times, donations have grown 20 times. I think both numbers are absolutely fantastic, right? Their alumni have not only channeled their own donations, but they have also channeled donations of their companies that they have joined. So Foundation for Excellence is an organization that provides scholarship for engineering, for medicine to kids from underprivileged backgrounds. And these kids on getting jobs have then contributed to this organization. And Foundation for Excellence has played a big role in making that happen. It's not happened automatically. They have played a major role. They've worked a lot in terms of making this happen. There's a fantastic case study on Foundation for Excellence in IDR, and I would urge everyone to look at it if you think that this is a viable mechanism for you to raise money. Vidyarambam Trust is another organization working for more than 50 years in Tamil Nadu. And their founder had been, so this is again a 10-year-old story. Their founder was the one who started it, running the organization for 40 years. And for 40 years, they had never asked their villagers or their beneficiaries for money. But after that, they went and got 1,000 rupees from every household that they had served. And in a matter of about 40 days, raised 40 lakh rupees. Just by collecting 1,000 rupees from every household that had been their beneficiaries. So I think we must expand our thinking in terms of where all can we get money from. Everybody around us a potential donor. We need to group this. We need to understand how we can look at them. And I think you will find that there is a way to do this. Somebody had asked in the question that, is there a breakup for media in terms of retail giving or individual giving in media? And I don't have that breakup. But my last point is actually, catering. One segment that this could cater to is the media segment. So this is a segment which I would say is a direct donor benefit. right? What I mean by this is that this is a segment where the organization in some way directly benefits the donor, right? And this tends to happen with organizations, for example, like Internet Freedom Foundation, where they are fighting for digital rights of every Indian citizen, right? Organizations in the media space, because we as donors are consumers of those media organizations. So can we ask those readers to give to us? And they are more likely to give to us because they are getting the benefit of it, right? They are seeing the kind of work that you are doing and they will get the benefit of it. Similarly, with spiritual organizations also are the one where in some sense the donor gets the benefit and that's why they are willing to give. So it's actually a lot more easier for such organizations because their benefit is getting delivered to the donor. Unlike other organizations where the benefit is to beneficiaries, here the benefit in some sense is to the donor itself. And I think if that story is told perfectly, the story is told very well, and I hold Internet Freedom Foundation in deep respect in terms of how they tell the story. I think that is another opportunity if you are an organization in this space. So, for example, this is how Internet Freedom Foundation does it. They cannot ask money for anything specific. They are an organization which is fighting for digital rights advocacy. They have created plans and they are giving very specific, tangible outcomes depending on which plan every donor selects. So if you are an organization which feels that there is no cause, I am not on the grassroots, I don't work with marginalized, I don't work on education, I don't work on children, please think of this as your inspiration. So with this, I end this segment. I think the key points I'd like to make, if I have to make one, is don't shy away, be bold to ask. And remember, you're not asking for yourself, you're asking for the benefit of others who are more in need. Would love to take questions at this stage.
Thanks, Dhaval. Anybody who has a question, please either raise your hand or just unmute yourself. We could do it one by one, or put your question on the chat box if you're not comfortable speaking out. You could ask specific questions about a challenge that you might have faced in your organization's context, something that you feel that Dhaval might not have covered.
Yeah, please feel free to share your experiences as well. Like I said, I'm always in the state of continuous learning. Would love to hear from and learn from your experiences. If something that you have faced specifically, which is different from what you've heard today, or is in contrast to what you've heard, I think it would be very, very relevant. Also share with others. I think it'll help everyone come out with their own experiences.
Dhaval, I think we do have a question on the chat box. Sangupta is asking, is it better to ask for monthly donations or annual donations? And if it's an option between both, or how do we share the communication over emailers without making it confusing?
Right. So I would say, Sanyukta, if you want to get, I think it is better to allow the donor to decide. Allow the donor to decide whether they want to give to you annually, if they're comfortable in that way, or they are comfortable to give to you monthly. It's good to have both options so that the donor decides is the most important thing in my respect. And yes, I think it is definitely important to have slabs of donations because most donors don't know how much to give. And whatever number you put out there is going to be a starting point for them to think about it. And if you don't put out a number, you're making them think, which means they'll not make the decision at that point. And with retail, like we've always said, it's a very impulsive decision-making process. So unless they make a decision at that point of time, they're most likely not going to make the decision. They're not going to donate to you. So to help them make a decision, it's good to have slabs. It's good to have different price points, cover a wide range so that people can, think about what is their budget and choose one of the options that is there.
Somebody else has, I think, unmuted and was asking, and I was reading out the question. Please go ahead. I couldn't.
Hello.
Sorry.
Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Is that Smita?
I'm Smita. Yeah. Smita Solomon from the organization called Waste Warring Society. And it's a waste management sector. We work in the waste management sector. So compared to the children's education or the women empowerment or livelihood waste sector, it's not showing a rosy picture. So we find very difficult in finding individual funding. So how can we go about it? But CSR, we find it a little bit challenging, but there are companies who fund us for the environment reasons. But for the individual, if you look at it, it's not that easy to tap that segment of people or individual. So how can we go about it?
Right. So I would say that I think that you do not have to always paste a rosy picture first and foremost, right? I think you can paint a grim picture. Waste affects all our lives. Waste is important to each one of us. And people who care about waste are actually deeply passionate about it. So you may have less donors, but you will have more passionate donors. And I think if you can make the story about how what you are doing or how waste impacts positively or negatively the person's life, an individual's life, I think that is the story that you will have to make out. And that is the story you will tell your donors, your individual donors, on how waste impacts them. Like whatever you are doing, how does it impact that particular individual? I think that's the most powerful story you can have. And that will be powerful because donors are then essentially giving to something that will benefit them. And so it kind of falls in that last sixth category that I spoke about, direct donor benefit. And people are more likely to give money and more money if there's a direct benefit to them. It's almost like, this is for me, right? We make a purchase for ourselves, we tend to spend more money. I would say it's in a similar fashion out here, that if you can make a story on how waste can impact them or the work that you're doing impacts that individual, then that's your hook into the individual donor segment.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question? Joe, I know you already responded to that question about what makes you sort of go back. But yeah, if you want to share more about your experience of having done that. And Swarna, you have your hand up. Maybe once Joe has spoken, you can ask your question.
Yeah, so when we began, of course, we didn't have our 3 years of audited accounts so that we could approach funders. And we had to rely completely on individual donations. And we did quite successfully. Every year we increased our take. And it was pretty simple. It was, there was nothing online in those days. So it was handwritten letters and phone calls. And when I would go back to the US, I would meet various relatives and collect all this money. And then once we began getting bigger grants, it just seemed like, wow, we've arrived. And now we, so we still got those same donations from those same people. They're still supporting us. Now it's been 30 years and we're still getting donations from that same group. It's just the percentage has declined significantly. But what I really enjoyed about the Give India challenge that we took part in October was the adrenaline that it gave us all, and the excitement, the immediacy of it, the instant returns. It was, just a different experience than we get. It's wonderful to get a big grant from some big donor, but it doesn't have that same, like, really, like, the whole foundation was excited, even though it was really just two of us working hard. But my problem with it as a sole strategy is that we pretty much plumbed all of our contacts. I don't know where we're going to get more people to, like, those same people will give us next year, but I don't feel like I can go back to them now and ask for a whole nother round. And, so widening that net, that's what I would like to work on now. How do we reach out to strangers? These were all people we knew or had some direct connection because somebody recommended us. So it's that. And but I get what you're saying, and I think there's huge potential in this. So it is an exciting area to explore.
Thanks for sharing that, Joe. I think that's a very useful sort of point to ponder upon. And when Dhaval speaks about the Dhanavriddhi program, he does sort of cover people like organizations like yours also. So maybe that'll be useful to gather. Swarna, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. So my question was, yes, I mean, the whole landscape of donation has changed and there is a lot more givers. And of course, social media allows us to tap into it. But I think somewhere than just technology where you have a donate button and it gets into an online payment, there's a whole lot of storytelling that is required, and that is where I'm thinking once you do a plug and play, like I honestly don't know the program that you have in mind, but that storytelling is a concept, because I don't know, us, we end up actually probably underplaying our work as organizations. We are not the ones who, talk a lot about what we do. We probably don't even take credit for what we do. So somewhere that seems to be a gap to actually bring in that. So the funnel is, you have the set of people, but you don't have the funnel to bring into you and actually click that donate. But, unless you are in one of those three key sectors, wherein, you have children, then you show a few hungry children, or if you have poverty, you show a few poor people, but if you're not in that sector, we are into wildlife conservation. And it's an extremely dead, serious, boring, completely behind the scenes work. And you probably in 15 years will hear of one success. So it's drudgery, it's ordeal. And how do you do storytelling? So for me, that's my bigger challenge in my head. And I know Dhaval can put in an engine and say, oh, here you go, you're ready with your donate button now.
Yeah, Swarna, I think interesting points. I would say that putting in a donate button is just an transacting engine. And I think what you've said very well is about the importance of storytelling. Because without storytelling, you are not going to get people to come to that donate button. So having a donate button is going to do nothing. It's going to just help people transact, but the storytelling is very important to get people to come there. So I always talk about acquiring donors offline and converting them online. So the mechanism for the donation should be online, but acquisition will yet have to be offline. Acquisition will yet have to be through various, maybe events that you do, through various outreach activities that you do, through various mechanisms that you land up interacting with people. But every interaction with people has to be a potential fundraising activity. And while you talk about wildlife conservation being a drudgy, dreary area where nothing happens, I think the fascinating piece for each and every one of us for our vacation is to go to some national park, no? Right? All our my friends keep wanting to go to national parks, and I'm sure so many of your folks want to do that. So, and everyone wants to spot that tiger and lion, and they will talk about it for the rest of their lives, about the one tiger and the one lion that they've spotted. And I think it's about being able to bring that story into your work. It's about bringing that story to life for donors to, again, relate with the fact that, hey, guys, you won't have these stories to tell if we don't do our work. and how you can merge these aspirations of people, merge these interests of people with the work that you are doing and kind of bring that up to life. I think we all have a very common excuse that we are not in children education and livelihood, and that's why we'll not raise money. But ask the organizations out there, do they have an easy time raising money? And they'll tell you, there are so many organizations in children. There are so many organizations. The money all gets dispersed. The money all gets spread out around it, so we don't get anything. I think every organization has their challenges. And I think we have to look more at what our strengths are. What is our USP? How can we connect with the individual? What is it that will click with that individual with respect to our organization that will make a difference? Right? And I think that there is a huge opportunity in this. In fact, I have the same thing with governance. I think a lot of organizations say governance is something people don't understand. Maybe people don't understand it, but people are impacted by governance, right? And I think that when people are impacted by governance, that is when, it makes a real difference to their lives. So if governance doesn't improve, it won't help them. And if governance does improve, it will. So that's why they should give money to organizations that work on government, right? So I think that is very important. And so I think, Joe, when you say every interaction has to be about fundraising, I'm not saying every interaction has to be about fundraising. I'm saying in every interaction, fundraising has to be brought up, but not only fundraising. It can have many other elements. But if you do many things and you don't talk about fundraising at all, I think we always err to the other extreme. We are always erring that we don't want to talk about it. We want to talk least about it. We want to talk about everything else we are doing. We want to talk about the great work we are doing, but we don't want to ask them for money. How will we do great work if we don't ask them for money, right? So I think it's important that in every time it is there, but it is, but that's not the only thing that it is. So I think that both of them are important, right? I think there were a lot of other
thanks, Dhaval. There are two more questions that I'll sort of quickly ask. Read out together. Sana is asking how important is brand building to sort of maintain influence loyal retail fundraising, which is retaining your retail donors. And Ravindra is asking, they run a Hindi web portal where they used to collect from friends and colleagues, but how do sort of they get donation from more English speaking reading community? How do, expanding your donor base beyond your immediate community?
Right. Yeah, Sana, so obviously I can never say that brand building is not important. Brand building is certainly important. Brand building will definitely help build retail fundraising even more. But everyone can't invest in brand building. Everyone can't spend the money that is required in brand building. But I think what everyone can do is develop a mindset of asking. Everyone can be okay asking their near and dear ones. Everyone can be okay to reach out to people and reach out year on year, right? Like a lot of times we say that, I reached them only last year and now I'll reach them this year. But yeah, every year people will give. People will give once a year. And there's nothing wrong in asking people once a year. And then a lot of people say, I asked them, but now I'll again ask them. But last year they didn't even give. So what's the big deal here? If they've not given, then what is your problem in asking? Let them not give again, worse comes to worse. But are you ready to ask? Right? I think that is the change in mindset that I would more focus on, especially if you're starting down that journey, if you're well down that journey. So if you've done the start phase, you've done the grow phase, you're on the scale phase, then yes, then we should talk about brand building. Then we need to talk about saying, how do you really, go to the next level from here? But I think a lot can be done, changing our mindsets, changing what we do itself, before even getting down into this expensive route of brand building. And Ravindra, I think what you're asking is, publication is for Hindi audience, but we used to get donation from English speaking community. So, okay, so I'm not sure what the problem is. I think it's interesting to know that if your audience was Hindi audience, how did you get money from the English speaking community? And did you ask your readers for money? I think that is the first part. Did you ask your Hindi readers for money, or how did these English speaking reading community give money? I think if you can expand a little bit, then I think we can address that. I think maybe we can come back to this a little later, Abhishek. Maybe we can go on to the next piece since we are running short on time now. Abhishek, is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was just reading Ravindra's response. I think he said we asked through for Facebook, social media. But yeah, maybe you can come back to it in a minute if you want to speak about it.
So we are, Danamojo is looking to launching a program called Dana Vriddhi. It's a 4-phase program to help organizations begin and scale their retail fundraising. It's to begin asking in a more structured fashion, building teams around this and doing this on a day-to-day activity. And I think this is something, a lot of y'all have government institutional donors, you all have faced pain during COVID, and retail fundraising is also something that many of y'all would have done during COVID. So you're aware that it has been helpful. The question is, how do we take it forward? How do we do it? I think that was one of the points. You don't know what to do, where to start. And that's where our program comes in. So what is Dana Vriddhi? It's a cohort-based program wherein we will have a bunch of 20 to 30 organizations that will come together and will have a training session. They will have and one-to-one coaching. So there will be online Zoom-based training where we will teach you theory. And then in the one-to-one coaching session, we will have people from my team working individually with each of your organizations to help you in every stage of this process and to deliver specific outcomes with specific goals at the end of every phase, and working with you individually to also leverage your strengths. Our goal in this is to institutionalize retail giving, where we deliver a 10x return on investment. And we are doing this in a principle of actually learning and doing at the same time. Because there is research that says that we retain 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, and 50% of what we see and hear, but 70% of what we actually do and say and write, right? More than 70%. 70% of say and write, 90% of doing. So we want to be a very practically oriented, tangible program that will implement principles by actually doing them. And this is the 4 phases that we are having in the program, which is list, inspire, fundraise, and engage, which is what we call life. In the first phase, the goal will be to list your donors and potential donors, and we will help you widen your thinking around who is a potential donor. The second phase is what somebody spoke about, storytelling. We will help you craft your story. We will help you craft your campaign, for which you will then raise funds in the 4th phase, in the fundraise process. So using the story, using the donors, you will actually do a fundraising campaign. And you will then have an engage phase wherein we will help you develop an engagement calendar, a communication calendar with your donors over the course of the year. We hope that success in this helps you make the decision to get started or to grow further in your journey of retail fundraising. So these are the things that we would cover in the different segments. So in terms of listing your donors, we would talk about the importance of online giving. We would talk about crowdfunding, when to use what. We would talk about donor acquisition. We would talk about how the donation process should work, what systems and processes you should have in place, and help you build this donor list to begin with. Help you build what we call a potential donor list is the outcome of this phase of the program. In the second phase, which is the Inspire program, Inspire phase, we will help you tell your story, craft and ask, help you develop your campaign and quality donation products. So our team will work with you to help you identify your campaign, build your campaign, and host it and help you set up channels of communication with your donor. So if you know, email marketing campaign, or if you're also interested in other things like SMS marketing and all, those are other things that we could help you set up as well. And specific outcomes that we would have, donation products for your website, and a campaign that you will then run in the fundraise phase, where our goal will be to again help you reach out, help you with one-on-one support in terms of reaching out and doing different things. And for you to raise a minimum of 4 lakhs is what we would consider our success metric for this one campaign. And then to develop an engagement plan, a communication calendar for your donors that you can then follow through for the rest of the phase and talk about, provide this to your donors on an ongoing basis over the year, and then obviously you can modify it. But we'd like to put a first draft plan for you in place along with you to help you do this. In all of this, we are working with you. We want to be clear that we are not going to do this, but we are going to assist you in doing it because you know your organization the best, and you can give the best result for this program. In terms of duration, this program, each phase of this program will be for 4 weeks and will require varying commitments through each phase of the program. Typically, on average, across the entire program, that will be about 1 to 1.5 days per week, peaking during the fundraising week, where it will be closer to 2 to 3 days per week of involvement of one of your team members. So we envisage this program as a program for the organization. So prima facie, any number of people from your organization can take part. There will be a team leader who will be responsible for the outcome of this program. The team leader will ideally be the founder, the CEO, the head of fundraising. The team member who will typically undergo the program will be part of all the trainings and with whom we will engage in the one-to-one coaching as well. Ideally, someone who's been in the organization for minimum of 3 years is in the role of a fundraising manager or a fundraising team member or communications or marketing. The last segment is pretty much anybody in your team can additionally join in. There is no limit on the number of people that can be part of this program. But like I said, we are here to help you. We are not here to do it for you. And we are different because we're not looking to train people alone. Yes, there will be training of people. People will learn how to do this. But at the same time, you as an organization will build capacity. You will build your retail fundraising engine. You will institutionalize this so that you can keep doing this every day, day in, day out across the year. And if you've not done a campaign, this will also be an experience for you towards an actual campaign exposure of running a retail fundraising campaign. And that is something that we will also be doing. So it is not just going to be classroom training, but actually raising money in this program. And plus, with support of RNP as well as ATCF, we also have matching grants on offer for this fundraising program. So this is the process that we follow. Sorry, there's a mistake in the dates. So we will have an application form that we will send out to you tomorrow, ideally. And the last date for applying for this program will be July 7th. My apologies, there's a mistake in the screen on the date. The first phase of this process will be the application process, wherein you will fill in the application form. The applications will be screened and selected applications will then move to the next phase, which is the selection process. In the selection process, we will conduct a short interview with the team lead and the team member to judge their readiness for this program, to judge whether you will be able to provide time, resources for this program to be successful within your organization. And at the end of it, we will announce the cohort. We expect each of these phases, the application process and the selection process, to take about 2 weeks each, and for us to announce the cohort by the end of August, or by the end of July or early August. The total cost of this program is 80,000 rupees. As an NGO, you will be paying 40,000, and we are lucky to have both RNP, Rohini Nelikani Philanthropies, and A.T. Chandra Foundation, which is funding 50% of the cost of this program. So as an organization, you only have to pay for 50% of the cost. And along with that, you would get a 1-year subscription to Danamojo's Advantage one-time platform. So in terms of what we've done, while Danavriddhi is a new program, we have trained people. We've overall trained more than 5,000 NGO people in various workshops, seminars, both online, offline, across cities. We have onboarded more than 1,100 NGOs onto our platform. As Danamojo itself, we have run 6 matching challenges where NGOs have raised 2.5 crores, more than 150 NGOs from 3,000 donors. And we've provided 75 lakhs in matching funds. I have also started matching challenges in India more than 10 years ago and ran 10 matching challenges and raised 25 crores with 5 crores in matching back in Give India. So these are just our, I think you've heard about me from Abhishek, and I'll just introduce my colleague Gopi, who once again has been in this space in the NGO sector for the last 15 years. Started with Give India, is currently on the board of an NGO called Tide, and is working with us as a campaign manager and will be driving the Danavriddhi campaign along with a few more associates from our end. So yes, happy to take any questions that there might be around this program or around what we discussed earlier in this session. Anyone has any questions regarding the program?
Please feel free to unmute and speak up if you have a question.
Okay, I think then we are done in that case. We will anyway be sending you our details, and my colleague Gopi is available to answer any questions that you might have. Gopi, if you can put your email ID in the chat box for people to get back to you, that would be great. And thank you everyone for your time, and thank you Abhishek for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dhaval. I think we'll share the link to and more information about the program also on an email to those of you who are here. And yeah, you can reach out to Dhaval and Gopi through that. Thank you. Thank you so much for attending, everyone.